Captain Ibrahim Traore, a name synonymous with change and controversy, has become a focal point in Burkina Faso's tumultuous political landscape. Born in 1988, Traore's journey to becoming the interim leader of Burkina Faso has been anything but ordinary. His story is one of ambition, military prowess, and a relentless pursuit of power. Traore's early life was marked by a commitment to education, completing his studies in Bobo Dioulasso before enrolling in the prestigious University of Ouagadougou. However, his path diverged from academia in 2010 when he enlisted in the Burkinabe army. His military career saw him ascend through the ranks, eventually serving in UN peacekeeping missions in the volatile region of Mali. These experiences would prove crucial in shaping his worldview and approach to security, ultimately leading him to orchestrate 2 coups d'état. In a dramatic turn of events in September 2022, Traore seized control from Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, a man who had himself taken power through a coup just 8 months prior. This audacious move positioned the 34-year-old Traore as the world's youngest head of state, a title he still holds today. His rise to power was met with a mixture of hope and trepidation, with many citizens yearning for stability amidst a backdrop of escalating violence and political turmoil. Traore's ascent was fueled by promises of change and a commitment to addressing the deeply rooted issues plaguing Burkina Faso. His rhetoric resonated with a population grappling with poverty, corruption, and a growing jihadist insurgency that threatened to destabilize the entire region. However, his methods have drawn criticism from some quarters, raising concerns about authoritarianism and the erosion of civil liberties. Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation in West Africa, is grappling with a multifaceted crisis that threatens its very foundations. For years, the country has been plagued by poverty, political instability, and a growing jihadist insurgency that has displaced millions and created a pervasive climate of fear. The security situation in Burkina Faso is dire, with large swaths of the country effectively controlled by armed groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. These groups, exploiting the porous borders and weak governance that characterize the Sahel region, have launched increasingly brazen attacks on civilians and security forces alike. The violence has been particularly acute in the northern and eastern regions of the country, where schools have been destroyed, villages razed, and countless lives lost. The humanitarian crisis is staggering, with over 3 million people internally displaced and struggling to access basic necessities like food, water, and healthcare. The insurgency's roots are complex and multifaceted, stemming from a confluence of factors including poverty, ethnic tensions, government corruption, and the spillover effects of conflicts in neighboring Mali and Niger. The jihadists have capitalized on these grievances, offering an alternative narrative that promises empowerment and divine justice. Their propaganda, often disseminated through local radio stations and mobile phones, has proven effective in recruiting disaffected youth and further exacerbating existing tensions. The Burkinabe government, struggling to contain the insurgency, has faced accusations of human rights abuses and extrajudicial killings by its security forces. These allegations, coupled with the government's perceived inability to protect its citizens, have eroded public trust and fueled support for the insurgents in some quarters. The situation is further complicated by the presence of foreign actors, including France and Russia, each pursuing their own strategic interests in the region. The fight against terrorism in Burkina Faso is not just a military campaign, it is a struggle for hearts and minds, a battle for the very soul of the nation. In response to the escalating security crisis, Captain Ibrahim Traore has implemented a series of drastic measures aimed at restoring order and reclaiming control from the insurgents. Central to his strategy is the mobilization of civilian militias, known as the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, or VDP. These volunteer fighters, often poorly equipped and lacking formal military training, have been thrust onto the front lines of the conflict, tasked with defending their communities against heavily armed jihadists. While the VDP has been credited with some successes, their deployment has also been met with controversy. There have been credible reports of human rights abuses committed by VDP fighters, including extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, and the recruitment of child soldiers. The government's decision to arm and deploy these militias has raised concerns about accountability and the potential for further violence against civilians. Ibrahim Traore's leadership has polarized public opinion in Burkina Faso. His supporters, many of whom are young people disillusioned with the previous government's perceived inaction and corruption, view him as a decisive leader willing to take on the country's entrenched problems. They applaud his focus on security, his Pan-Africanist rhetoric, and his efforts to reduce government spending by slashing his own salary and selling off luxury vehicles. However, Traore's critics, including human rights groups and opposition politicians, accuse him of authoritarianism and of sacrificing civil liberties in the name of security. They point to the government's crackdown on dissent, the suspension of critical media outlets, and the arrests of journalists and activists as evidence of a slide towards dictatorship. The increased use of CCTV cameras and other surveillance technologies has further fueled these concerns, raising fears of mass surveillance and the erosion of privacy.